This is the lecture that is lesson 17 in Lambden. This is a continuation of our Hebrew construct chain lecture. Let's go to the first slide. There are many exceptions to the rules for the construct nouns that you studied in lesson 16. Most of these exceptions are too infrequent to establish a type. There are a few exceptions that appear with enough frequency that they do require our attention. Let's look at a couple of these. First, some singular monosyllabic nouns, such as av or ah, add a suffixed hierarch yod. For example, look at the absolute form here. We have av and ah, both as you normally have seen them in vocabulary lists. Now look over at the next column at the construct version. In the construct version, the word ends with a hierarch yod, and there's a little bit of vowel reduction under that aleph for both father of and brother of. Nouns such as bayit and mawet contract in the construct form. For example, bayit in the absolute form or mawet turn into beit and mot. So we've heard of Bethlehem. This is a construct, house of bread, Bethlehem, and we get just a little bit of contraction there. Instead of a patah hierarch yod, we get seri yod. We've seen that before, but now you might understand a little more of why it's that way. That's a construct phrase, and that's causing that contraction. Okay, in the construct form, bain is usually associated to the absolute noun with a makef, and then the seri reduces to a segel. So usually we have son in the absolute form. Looks the same way it shows up in your vocabulary. When we put ben in the construct form, notice that the vowel changed a little there, and it has a makef as well to connect it to whoever the father is of that son. Nouns with the vowel pattern of kamet seri will change to the vowel pattern of segel segel in the construct form. For example, here's two words that we don't have in our vocabulary yet. One is thigh and one is shoulder. Notice that the word for thigh, yerek, turns into yerek, with a little reduction there to a segel under the yod instead of a kametz under the yod. The same thing happens with shoulder. Katef turns into ketef, where the kametz reduces and we get a segel vowel pattern instead of a kametz seri vowel pattern. So we get kind of these odd little changes in the vowels that have to do with the construct noun being up against the absolute noun in a construct chain, and as a result it reduces some stress. We get a little vowel reduction, a little change in the vowels. Let's look at another example. Let's look at nouns that end in segel hay. They change to seri hay. For example, sadeh, as you know, is field. If we wanted to say field of, notice that instead of a segel hay, the ending is seri hay. Notice that the kametz reduced to a schwa. So there's a little vowel reduction there in the construct version. Alright, now let's look at feminine singular nouns in the construct form. The nouns we've looked at already are all masculine singular odd kind of nouns that change. But now we'll look at feminine singular nouns. Let's look at the list of nouns here. We have shana, which is year, makah, which is queen, and tefla, which is prayer. Notice that to say year of, we get vowel reduction instead of kametz. We get schwa patah. And the hay at the end of shana turns into a tav, shanat. So if we want to say year of the dragon, I don't know the Hebrew word for dragon, but we would have to say shanat instead of shana for the year of. Look at the example for queen. We have malka, and now we have malkat for the construct version of the absolute form malka, construct malkat. Tefillah is the word for prayer. Tefilat, with a tav on the end instead of a hey, is the construct version to say prayer of. So our feminine singular forms, not only do they have a little vowel reduction, but that ending hey that we're used to seeing in a feminine singular ending of comets hey. Notice all three of those have comets hey in the absolute. That's the feminine singular ending, if you remember from the first week of school. Now we have pata tav as the ending instead in the construct. So that makes it easy to tell if a noun is in a construct, because you'll have a series of nouns, and these feminine singular nouns will all have ot instead of ah for their endings. All right, there's a couple of exceptions, of course, to the rules. Generally, 3-syllable nouns that begin with a closed syllable have penultimate stress in the construct form. In other words, the vowels change a little differently than we would have expected. For example, with the word battle, milchama is the word for battle, milchemet is the word for the construct form, battle of. We get a little different. The first syllable is closed. That's what we're talking about when we say the closed syllable. And then hamet instead of hama just changes the stress of the word, and of course takes that ah ending and puts et on the end. The reduction of seri or comets to a schwa does not occur in some words. This is not a consistent pattern, but should be recognized when it occurs. So every once in a while, your absolute noun, like berka, which you learned as a vocabulary word, will change to berkat, blessing of, in the construct form. So there's just a few extra little changes in words. And our final slide, just to review, feminine nouns that end in ah, ot, et, ate, or oot do not always change when in the construct form. If they do change, the changes follow the general rules you have already learned for construct nouns. One irregular exception is isha, which becomes eshet in the construct. That's kind of an irregular, different one. But generally, a feminine singular noun that ends in ah, or any of these other endings that are more rare, will undergo a little bit of a change, but not consistently and not always. Let's take a second and go back to our slide to remind ourselves that feminine singular nouns will move from ah to ot instead. I think that's the key to remember. Just watch for those nouns to take the tav instead, and recognize the rest of the word as a vocabulary word, and just rebuild it in your mind as you look at it, and try to think, okay, what is that word? This could be a construct form. Instead of ah, it's ot, and if I put ah here, do I recognize the word? I think that's kind of the key. If you were looking at shanat and you were wondering what vocabulary word that would be, you might look in the back of the lexicon and look under shin, noon, and only see, not see shanat, but see shana, and then that might remind you, oh wait, this is the construct form. Let me replace it with ah and see if I recognize the word more readily. And that's kind of how you can build yourself back out of those construct forms. All right, that's it on lesson 17. You'll want to do the homework and review my YouTube video on the homework to see how your translations go. Watch out for chains of noun in your homework that are construct chains, especially these feminine singulars turning into ot instead of ah. That's it, and I'll see you in class on Monday.